Boy, I think Junior may have spun the tires, Larry.
And what a break that was for Gordon, but look on the high side. Oh, Gordon comes up.
Oh,
he
got Kenson. Oh, and there goes Jeff. Jeff's in the inside wall, hard into the wall.
Caution will wave. Caution will wave. The field is frozen. We'll be coming back to 4 to go.
That was, and he almost got clipped again.
Whoa. Now that was a hit. You know, I've never been to an auto race before. Watched a few on TV. But I'm told that a lot of people who go to them to see the hits into the wall or the cars collide with each other. It can get a little exciting. And if you think about it, life is the same way. That it's like an auto race in that we can be going great guns at high speed, everything's fine, then all of a sudden we hit the wall. We spin out. We feel a little bit tired and run down, so we come into church to be uplifted, like a car pulls into the pit, so the pit crew can change the tires and check the oil, the fluids, and all that sort of thing. Yeah, just like a lot of other lessons in this series, we're going to look today at how life, and the Christian life especially, can be like an auto race. Hey, as we've always said, if you're not careful, you might just learn something before we're done. So let's get started. And we'll try and stay off the walls for this one. Okay, look it up in the, yeah. I gave you the title. What more do you want?
I can't read. I wrote it. 480 or 466? Okay, 466. Thank you.
Well, we've been looking the last couple of weeks at comparing Christianity and using sports as a means of doing it. Last week we looked at the fact that in the NFL, every team has an owner. And we have an owner in the church. Jesus owns the church. He gets to make the rules. He gets to set the agenda. We looked at David and Goliath in terms of a baseball game and making the rounds of the bases. We looked at what a sports fan can teach us. Remember, sports fans are pretty excited about their teams, especially here in the South where we really get into college sports, college football especially. And you can see all the excitement that it generates. This last week at school, Thursday was college day, and a lot of around here it was a lot of FSU and FAMU, but there were some Gators or even a few people who were with the right team, Alabama. But they all had different jerseys. There were some that had wigs on with their team colors. It's a big deal. And as Christians, we need to be as excited about Jesus and Christianity as a sports fan is. Amen. Now, today we're going to take it to a little bit different. We're going to look at it in terms of a race. And you can see the strategy here of NASCAR, turn left, turn left, turn left, because that's really what you do on a racetrack. Whether it's a car or you're on a foot race, you're just going around in circles. But there's another race that's probably a little more applicable to us. That's called the Great Race. And this, for 2019, they're going to be going from Riverside, California up to Tacoma, Washington. This is not a race for speed. This is a race that actually tests your endurance and your ability to follow instructions. I'd probably flunk out the first mile, because they are given instructions to, first of all, to stay at or below the posted speed limit. And they go cross country, not on the interstate highways, but they take the back roads. And they have certain times and certain markers they're looking for on their maps. And this is going to be a test of their mental agility and endurance in a classic car race, because they're not using new cars. They're using some of the classics. that some of the older members, shall we say, might have remembered from when you were kids. Ones that even go back before that to the 1930s and the 1940s. It avoids time segments on interstate highways just because of all that's involved in getting on there. But what I want us to see today is that whether you are on a race that is going from point A over here to point B, or you're on a track where you're just going in circles, there are some comparisons between that and Christianity. Because life resembles many times a race of endurance. Sometimes, though, we get the feeling like we're just going in circles. And I want us to look at the biggest race of all. I want us to compare this to the human race of life that we have. And consider, first of all, how an auto racer needs to have a pit crew. If you're following along on the outline, look at the pit crew. What does the pit crew do? Well, you can see from here, from this picture, this guy right here looks like he's changing the tire. They're doing, looks like another tire here. Checking the hoses and belts and fluids, checking the driver who's in there. There's a lot that they do here, and we use the term pit stop even in our own vernacular. If you're going down the highway and I need to make a stop, okay, we'll make a pit stop right here. That's what they're doing here. And in this car race, the driver needs a pit crew. Well, for us as Christians, this is our pit crew right here, the local church. This is where we need to be able to come in and get charged up. It's like, over here they're doing, and here we need to be able to do the same thing. This is a place where we need to come and be able to refuel, like they sometimes have to do at a pit stop. Because they're going so fast, they've got to be able to get fuel in a hurry, because they're going to eat up a lot of fuel. They're going to need a lot of charging. They're going to need a lot of tires throughout the race. We're going to need that as Christians occasionally. And we need to think about that when we're coming in here on Sundays or Wednesdays. Maybe I am feeling down and I'm dragging. And so, or you may be down and dragging, but that's where I need to be as uplifting as I can. And we all need to be as uplifting and recharging as we can to each other. You got to stop and think about it. When we're out there on the job or we're at Walmart, how much are they really doing to help us increase or encourage our Christianity? Oh, probably about zero. On a good day? So when we come here, this should be a safe place to recharge, rejuvenate, rebuild. And then let's remember this is a place where we should come to help us get through tough times. Now maybe coming through with an illness, maybe. I'm not a doctor, I don't even play one on TV. I can still pray for you, I can still give you encouragement. May not be able to help a lot with other issues in life, but I can always be a sounding board. I can pray for people, and we can pray for one another to get through the various tough times. The church, wherever I have gone, has always had some tremendous people in it. We've got some right here, but even the strongest, the best, the most tremendous, awesome, are going to feel down at times and are going to need to be lifted up. And as Christians, we've got to be aware of that. Spiritual fatigue is a real thing. Especially because remember, being a Christian does not exempt you from life's problems, does not exempt you from getting sick, it does not exempt you from having financial worries or having family problems. It does not exempt you from anything. And so we've got to be there where we are building one another up and being alert to these things. And as Paul put it this way, he said, carry each other or bear one another's burdens, and in this way you fulfill the law of Christ. Help. If you're carrying a heavy box, you can't lift it. And I come along, here, let me help you. Let me take the end of that. Here, let me get the door for you. Those are the kinds of things we need to be aware of, and it applies spiritually and emotionally. Because this is how we bear one another's burdens, being the pit crew rather, is we bear one another's burdens. And who needs to be the burden bearers? Those who are spiritual. Who are going to be the most spiritual among us? Let me tell you, that's going to vary from sometimes hour by hour. People who are the most spiritual and the strongest this week might have something happen this week that they're knocked down. And they need a helping hand. They need to be lifted up. But the spiritual are going to be those whose fruit of the Spirit is seen in their lives. You ever known a Christian? You could just look at them and you can see there's the fruit of the Spirit. You can see they've got a sense of peace. You can see that they are really living it. And then there's others you look at and you're thinking, oh boy, are you serious? Is he a Christian? Those are the ones you probably don't want to go to. Remember, here's the thing you got to remember. Satan I don't believe is all-knowing. But he is smart. He is a very careful observer of human conduct. If he looks at you and he can see a weak spot, he's going to use it against you. He will use whatever means necessary. He knows his time is running out. And what's the great line? Misery loves company. He wants as much company in eternity with him as he can possibly get. So he is out to get whoever he can. So this pit here, for this pit stop, let's be each other's pit crew to encourage and help each other get back out into the race of life, because as a race driver has to stay focused. Even though he may be going in circles, he's got to be focused on what's going on around him. Now, even a driver, those of us, I don't know if anyone here has ever raced before of any kind, but out on the highway, you still have to really seriously multitask, don't you, when you're driving? Take a road trip up to Atlanta or Denver, or pick your big city, Jacksonville, wherever. You're on an interstate, 5 lanes of traffic stretching out. Yeah, you got to know what that guy up there is doing, what the one over here is doing behind you. And there are times my daughter's wanting attention or something. I say, you got to be quiet a minute. I need to concentrate. I need to focus. Which is exactly what Paul said to do, because remember, the race is not over until you've crossed that finish line. And if you've ever I ran track a little bit in high school, and there was a race where I was starting to let up because I was clear I wasn't going to win it. And I could hear the coach saying, "Cordell, pick it up. Don't you quit." And then he got on me after I crossed. Don't you ever do that again. Don't you ever slow down until you've crossed that finish line. Right. And that's the way as Christians we have got to be. That's what Paul's trying to encourage them to do. Because a car that veers off track, if the driver is not focused, he's going to lose time. A runner, if you look back, if you're trying to walk and you look over your shoulder, you notice you can't walk as fast. Not only that, but you're not paying attention to where you're going, so hit the table, you walk into someone. Or in the case of a race car driver, he wipes out if he's not focused. He hits the wall. He hits another car. And then look at what happens. And that in life can be the same thing. We take our focus off Jesus. We're looking at all the things that are going on around us. Before too long, you've hit the wall. And Jesus, remember, encouraged us on this racetrack to look at the 2 distinct paths we've got. Enter, he says, through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road, and few who find it. Now think about this too, that you essentially are at a fork in the road. Do I want to go this way where Jesus wants me, or go this way? Because that narrow gate is a confined space with a little room. Just like the lane of traffic you're in. I mean, if you're paying attention, the standard road lane is wide enough, but you notice it's not much wider than your car. If you've ever driven an 18-wheeler or one of those large U-Haul trucks, you notice you've got even less room to deal with. And especially when you come into places like parking lots. I really do not like parking lots. I hate driving through parking lots. Because then there's people that are coming out of Walmart pushing the cart. They're not paying attention to where they're going. The next thing they're in front of me. Or they're coming through going too fast. You have to pay attention in that little space. Because we also have to understand too that we have to be going the right direction and focusing on what we're doing. The right direction, just like on a racetrack. If they're going clockwise, you don't want to get on there going counterclockwise. Or if you've ever turned the wrong way down a one-way street. Yeah, I've done that at least once that I remember when I first started driving. It's scary. You'd make a right turn. Wait a minute, why are all the... Oh, I need to get out of here. So you got to be going the right direction. God wants us going the right direction on the right road. Which means we've got to watch our walk with God every day. Others need to be able to see Jesus in us. I was watching, I had a video up here before Sunday school this morning. It was one of the Apologetics Press videos, and he was talking about ideas and aspects of evolution. And a thought that I've kind of come up with, in fact, while I was studying for this lesson, is that I don't think people have such a hard time accepting Genesis 1. some people can be talked or shown that where Genesis 1 is what happened at the beginning. They don't have such a hard time with things like Jericho. What they have a hard time, Jericho marching around and the sounding of the trumpets, that sort of thing. What people tend to have a hard time with is Christians not behaving like Christians. Not showing Jesus and showing God every day of their lives. That seems to be our biggest stumbling block. So as we're going through the race of life, keeping ourselves focused on Jesus will help us to show others that there is a God in heaven, that Jesus is the way that we need to be going. And then a race car driver has to keep their eye on the goal. And this goes for any sport, any activity. I've got to stay focused. A football team, our focus today is to win. That running back takes the ball and goes run. His focus is that end zone down there. Track, a marathon, hockey, soccer, pick your sport. There's the goal. To get the puck or the ball into that goal and score points, and score more points than the other team. They're focused on it. And a good race car driver keeps his eye on the finish line and on the prize. Let me ask you, is your focus and attention still on the prize? Or do you get distracted easy? 1 Corinthians chapter 9, Paul talking to the people there, using the illustration of the Isthmus Games. There, I said it without stumbling on it. That predates the Olympics. That was one that Paul was using as an illustration of a runner running to claim the wreath as a prize. He's trying to encourage them to keep their attention focused, to keep themselves on the Lord, because a good runner, a good athlete is going to make sure that he not only keeps his attention focused, but that he trains. Training takes discipline. Training takes effort. And it's easy to get up and just go for a walk. I can do that. But if I had to, let's say, just run a 5K, that's 3 miles, I'm going to have to train. I'm not in the best shape. I'm in shape, you see, but it's not the shape that a runner needs to be in to be able to run a 5K. I'm going to have to do, which means I'm going to have to discipline myself. I'm going to have to deny myself some of the foods and some of the things that I like to eat. And I'm going to have to change my eating habits for a while to train for this. And as a Christian, I might have to, as I'm training, deny myself some things. I might have to go through a period of fasting and prayer. I might also have to give up some things that are bad for me that I have no business being involved in, but that's just what I have to do if that's what the Lord wants. And then a race car driver cannot be looking back over his shoulder, or he's headed for a crash. Texting becomes a distraction a lot of times. Looking over my shoulder to something, that's a distraction. I'm headed for a crash if I do that. Race car drivers, whether they're on the great race going across country, or whether they're on the NASCAR circuit, the Indianapolis racing circuit, they've got to be looking forward. What about us as Christians? How many of us every once in a while get to thinking about something we did that, I wish I hadn't done that? But our mistakes need to be put where they belong, and that is in the past. I have to do that a lot with the kids that I work with when they come into class. Maybe they had a bad day yesterday and did bad on a test, or maybe they had an argument with another student or something, got in a fight, whatever. We have to tell them, okay, hey, today's a new day. Forget about what happened yesterday. It's time to focus on what we're doing today, which is pretty much what Paul said. I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things that are behind me, reaching forward to those things which are ahead, I press toward the goal of the prize of the upward call of Christ Jesus. We've all got things that we wish we could do differently, don't we? Fortunately, I can 6 or 7 things in my life that if I could go back and do something different, I would. Those are the lessons where, how many of us when we bought our first house made a lot of mistakes and it ended up costing us a lot of money because we were just anxious to buy a house? First car, a lot of those first time things that we do, and then we look back and we say, why did I do that? But we can learn from those things, and that's what we need to do, is just, okay, I learned a lesson. Now let's move on. Don't dwell on your past. That's like driving down the road or being in a race and you keep looking in the rearview mirror. And then here comes the wall that you're about to hit because you're distracted. We've all done things that we regret, maybe that we're even ashamed of. Maybe we have to live with some tension We've got to put it behind us and look forward to our hope that is in Jesus, to that heavenly hope. Realize that we are forgiven. The hardest thing usually for me to do is to forgive myself and not beat myself up over something that's happened back in the past. But with the Lord, He'll forgive us and then move on and just don't do it again and have a life of obedience. You know, that's what Paul was trying to tell them. He did a lot, and I sometimes wonder when Paul would be lying trying to go to sleep at night if he didn't think about some of the Christians he persecuted and some of the things he did before he became a Christian. You know, he did not attain perfection or a complete knowledge of Jesus, but unlike the Judaizers, he did not consider what he had achieved spiritual maturity because he knew he wasn't perfect. He was going to continue to grow. He had the confidence, though, in his ultimate goal, and that was reaching heaven. Then notice Ephesians 6. We're in a spiritual battle against dark forces. Have you ever stopped to think about, maybe you've never spent a day in the military, but you're still at war. We're in a spiritual battle. Paul said in Ephesians 6, put on the whole armor of God. Now we're going to have potluck lunch here after this, but you know what? I don't wear armor to go to a potluck or to go to a picnic. But if I'm going into battle, I'm going to wear armor. He told Timothy to fight the good fight. He says, we wrestle not against principality. You ever get the notion that the scriptures compare a Christian life to war and battle, never to a picnic or to relaxing on the beach? I think there's a reason for that. Think of what we're going to have to deal with in life. Put on your armor. Prepare for battle. And remember, in a race, what matters is crossing the finish line first. In a ball game, are we going to have more points than the other team? Now, of course, when we cross the line to go into heaven, it's not going to be first place, second place, third place. You know, we just want to finish. We just want to be able to get there. And in the Christian life, there will be times, though, along the way we stumble. But yet set your sights on finishing this race. Mark chapter 13, Jesus said, he who endures to the end shall be saved. Endures. Again, that doesn't sound like a picnic. That sounds like something I'm going to have a lot of toughness in order to go through. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, we're all running in a race. Me, you, everybody. But he's speaking there, of course, of a spiritual race. It's not a physical race that we're dealing with the writer of Hebrews. Hebrews 12, the writer tells his readers to throw off everything that hinders you. Now, what could hinder me in my Christianity? Is there a bad habit that I've got? Is there sin in my life? It's like if I'm trying to run. If I'm going to go out now, let's say, and train and run, I'm not wearing this suit. It's going to hinder me. I need to put on running clothes. Things that will help me to have the freedom of movement, to keep me cool, that I would need to run if I'm going to train for a race. That's what the writer of Hebrews is. The word there could also refer to a runner stripping off any burdensome clothing. Or maybe even, are you ready for this? Shedding something like excess weight. Could even be shedding that. You see, so for the Christian to lay aside everything that hinders, it means for us to lay aside any sin, anything that is going to come between us and the Lord. And that's what he has in mind there. And keep in mind, he's talking about a marathon type of run. Something you have to pace yourself for. And then let's look at, in our race, endurance is more important than speed. If you're running 100 meters, that you need speed. If you're trying to run the Boston Marathon, you need endurance more than you need speed if you want to finish. Probably told you about my 9th grade science teacher who was on the 1976 Olympic cross-country ski team. Hey, did you get a medal? I asked him, and he just looked at me and he said, I was doing good to finish. That was really my goal. I think he came in something like 120th out of 170 people that were competing in the race. Look at Ecclesiastes chapter 9, beginning in verse 11. You see, even our best abilities do not guarantee we're always going to be successful, because there's going to be things that happen that we cannot control, no matter how hard we try. You can be the most careful driver in the world. Buckle up the seatbelt. I have known people, even back when seatbelts were not that popular, I knew people who would not start the car until everybody in the car had their seatbelt fastened.